Thank you, Gay. What a special time together as a family, and to hear how God is at work amidst us. I told you last week, and for the next 3 weeks, church is going to be different than what you're used to, and I hope that God has blessed you and touched you during this special time. I'm just going to put a bow on top of the package today, and we're going to be done this morning. But I do want to draw your attention to the word church. It's on your listening guide there. We're going to move quickly through these points. But when I look at the word church, I see something that helps guide my focus in life. The first two letters of the word church are CH. And they're also the first two letters in the name Christ. This reminds me that everything that I do as a Christian should be under the priority of Christ. That He should be the most important thing. What comes first in my life should be Christ and His perspective, His goals, His dreams for me. And the same should be true for His church. That as a church, we need to make sure that we prioritize Christ above all. Then I look at the end of the word church, and lo and behold, the word church ends with the exact same two letters, right? CH, which again are the first two letters in the name Christ. And this reminds me that the goal of everything that we do should be to promote the name of Christ. It's not about drawing attention to me or even to this church, but the goal of the church is to point people to Jesus. So He's the most important thing, the Alpha, if you will. He's what we point to in all that we do, the Omega, if you will. And what does that leave in the middle? Just two letters. You are. We live in a texting age where not every word is spelled all the way out, right? So these two words mean more than just their alphabetical representation. You abbreviates the word for you as a person, Y-O-U, and are is an abbreviation for the verb are, A-R-E. You are. Christ is at the front of church. Christ is the culmination of the church. But what makes up the church is you are. You and me, we are a part of what makes up the church that points to Christ, that exalts Christ, that lists the name of Christ above all things. And that's why we do what we do. That's why we have trunk or treat on Tuesday night. To point people to Christ, to help them to experience Christian love, and for us as the church family to go out and be the extension of Christ in our community. It's why everything that we do should ultimately be about Christ and us pointing to Him in our lives. So quickly, two things about church that are important to me, and I think are important for us to be able to accomplish what church really means. And the first is that membership is a covenant. A covenant. At West Oak Woods, whenever someone is interested in joining the church family or they have recently joined the church family, we have a Welcome to West Oak Woods class. We had one here just a month or so ago. And in that class, we spend a little bit of time talking about what it means to be involved in a covenant with your church. A covenant is a word that describes a committed devotion. God covenants with us in love. He's devoted to us. Whenever Michelle and I exchanged vows nearly 20 years ago, we made a covenant with each other. We committed ourselves to be loyal and devoted to each other. And whenever a person joins with a church family, they make a covenant with that family. In that class, we articulate these 10 items as part of what it means to make that commitment. And I want to draw your attention to these and ask you to reflect upon your commitment and my commitment to these important principles. We are committed to attend and participate in the worship services of the church. Second, to attend and be involved in a small group, just like Steve shared about a few moments ago in being involved in life group class. 3, to grow in the Lord and begin to use your time, talent, and gifts in a place of ministry. 4, to give joyfully and generously to the church. 5, to encourage and support the unity of the church. 6, to love the other members. 7, to accept the other members. 8, to serve the other members. 9, to encourage the other members. And 10, to forgive the other members. Now I'm going to ask the guys in the booth to leave that up just for a few moments. Now I want you to scan over that list. If you'd like for me, I can email it to you this week. But scan over that list and look and see if there might be an area where you want to be more intentional this next week. An area where you want to reflect upon and pray about your involvement and your covenant within your church family. And pray about that. And ask God to guide you in how to be more intentional in the covenant that you've made and being a part of the West Oak Woods family. That's why it's so valuable to be connected with each other. It's more than just coming and enjoying a worship service on Sunday morning. That's very important and very meaningful, very valuable to our Christian life as we worship and celebrate God. But if that's all we do, we aren't connected with each other. But within a family, we belong. So when you do go through tough times and experience grief like Vicki shared about, or you are in that sandwich generation like Steve shared about, or you're going through personal, physical restoration like Sue talked about, in those times, those relationships of depth help hold us up and support us through those challenging moments of life. Church is a covenant, but it is also, secondly, a community. It's a place to belong. It's a place to connect. It's a place to find support. It's a place to find strength. It's a place for guidance. It's a place where you can be you and make mistakes and still be accepted and loved. West Oak Woods is not a perfect place. We are not a perfect church. But we are a place where people who are imperfect can come to the one who is perfect, who makes all things well. It's my philosophy that a church is a hospital. It's a place where people who are spiritually sick come and find healing. If you're looking for a church that doesn't have any sickness, this is not the place for you. And if you find it, let me know, because I'd like to be the next member. But none of us would expect to walk into a hospital and find everybody well. When we walk into a church, we need to have that same understanding that we are all struggling with sin and restoration and transformation, and we're not fully well yet, but we're in the process of God making us well and making us whole. And because of that, there's still sickness that lingers, and we have to grow through that together with each other. But there's community in growth together. So we come together as a family, as a body. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians 12 through 14. Just as a body, though it one has many parts, but all its many parts form one body, so it is with Christ. For we were all baptized by one Spirit, so as to form one body, whether Jew or Gentile, slave or free, and we were all given the one Spirit to drink. Even so, the body is not made up of one part, but of many. This body is a fascinating thing, right? This body that God created for you to live in is amazing. I read some interesting statistics this week. The human body contains nearly 100 trillion cells. You mathematicians know how many zeros that is, but that's just way too many zeros for me to calculate. The human brain itself contains about 100 billion nerve cells, all working. Well, hopefully they're all working. The human body contains about 650 muscles. Dr. Lowe, I'm sure you had to memorize all those names at one point in time. That just is an amazing amount of muscle mass within our human bodies. The human body contains 206 bones. I mean, just the magnitude of God intentionally making all these aspects. The human body contains about 100,000 miles of blood vessels if you laid them all out. And if you untwisted our DNA, the human body contains about 10 billion miles of DNA in your body. The human body sheds about 600,000 particles of skin every hour. That's too gross. I don't want to talk about that. The human body's long-term memory can hold 1 quintillion bits of information. That just boggles the mind to think about that. The average adult takes over 20,000 breaths in a day. And we could go on and on and on and talk about the majesty of the creation of God that we call the human body. And that is what Paul likens the church to. A body with many functions and many parts and many different gifts and many different talents and many different abilities and many different perspectives on life. And amidst all that diversity, we come together to be one body. The body that represents Christ on earth as it is in heaven. So while each of us have an indisputable function, an indispensable aspect of the body, we all must come together if we are going to represent Christ. In order for a puzzle to be complete, every single piece must be in its place. In order for the body of Christ to accurately represent Jesus, every single person must be fulfilling God's call in their lives. And so I ask you to pull out the little white index card that was in your connection folder today as we wrap the service up. And I ask you to reflect prayerfully on where you might want to be involved as a member. Whether you're a member of this church yet or not, you're still praying about that decision, I ask you to consider being a member in at least one of these different areas and begin to build that community, that covenant relationship with one another. Life group classes. We've heard already today about how important that is to get involved in a class. And I'm not just talking about going every once in a while, but be committed to go and connect with the people in that class, relate to them, open up with them, share with them, listen to them, pray with them, build relationships within that small group. Second, Wednesday night programming. If your schedule permits you to be able to come on Wednesday nights as a kid, as a teen, as a young adult, as a middle-aged adult, as an older adult, there are tremendous opportunities for us to walk around this church campus and walk and talk and get to know each other, to play with the kids upstairs or hang out with the students over in the youth portable and connect with each other, to get together in Bible study or choir and build bonds and relationships. This group that sits up here on Sunday mornings, they don't just sing, but they are a family within the family. There are relationships and bonds that are built there as they serve together with each other. Grief share. We've already heard a tremendous testimony about how impactful that was in Vicky's life and Eddie's life. Sarah's here. She'd be glad to answer questions that you might have about the Surviving the Holidays opportunity or other ways you can get plugged in. The course is going to start again after the first of the year, and you can start in it at that time. Tremendous opportunity. Fellowship team, helping plan and organize fellowships for our church, ways to hang out and spend times together. Women's ministry, men's ministry, youth ministry, children's ministry. All these are avenues where you can get plugged in, build relationships with people that are your peers, that are fellow Christian brothers and sisters, and walk through life together. After the service ends in a few moments, I get the privilege to baptize Christina. We'll baptize her here after the service ends, and those of you that want to linger around and join with us in that celebration, we invite you to do so, and family will gather here and we'll celebrate. What a tremendous example of God bringing us together and a desire to want to be a part of it. Some of you have been a part of it for a long time, but I ask you this next week to reevaluate your investment in the relationships of the membership of this church family and how God can help use each of us to form the body of Christ that shows the world who Jesus truly is. So today, we're going to end different. Probably not surprised, right? It's been different all morning. Instead of having a normal invitation, as I customarily would come down and receive you, pray with you, I'm going to ask each of our 4 pastors to come to the front and stand in front of the sections. Terry will be here, and Matt, and myself, and Chris. And we're going to ask you to take a few minutes to pray about your card, and then to come forward and hand that to one of our pastoral staff and to take a few minutes to pray for our church. You can do so collectively as small groups. You can do so privately. But after you've had time to pray for our church and your commitment as a member of our church or to the membership of our church, you'll dismiss yourselves. You're welcome to slip onto the back, to visit on your way out, and go about your day. But please continue to be prayerful for our church. There's nothing more important that any of us can do than to fall before the God who sits above the universe and to beckon him to do a mighty work in our lives and in the life of this church family. So come as the Lord impresses upon your hearts. Gather with the pastors here at the front and take some time to pray over how God might continue to use West Oak Woods to be a light in this community.